Hey everybody, Jay Weidner here, Reality Check, uh, your favorite woo show, I hope. And we're back today with another program. Um, you know, there's this thing called the Maunder minimum. Every 400 years we go into it. And you've heard me talk about the 400-year-old reset. And if you go back in history, every 400 years, there's these events that happen. And 400 years ago, around 1600, Europe was in a deep freeze, and the pilgrims who came to America almost died. That's what Thanksgiving is all about. And now it's 400 years later. So I'm bringing in my favorite weather person, my good buddy Scott Stevens, of course, and he has an alternate. What would he say? He's a radical meteorologist, you might say, and he has different views on weather, but he has a great predictive abilities. So, hey, Scott, how you doing?
Glad to be here with you on this Woo Thursday, Jay.
Yes,
We like our Woo. I have to tell you, I like Woo. Cliff, I don't know if it was Cliff, but Cliff co-opted that word, and it's looking good.
yeah. Woo is everything that the normies can't accept.
Yeah,
So as soon as the normies accept something, it's no longer woo.
no,
So
it's wow.
and we're at, yeah, and we're at the
It's
edge
wow.
right now where the woo is overwhelming everything, and the normies have nowhere to go except towards the woo because it's the only thing that'll help them explain what's actually going on around them.
Hey,
So there's just going to be more and more.
it's towards the Woo or the mommy's basement, one or the other.
I like to think of us as woosters, you know.
Roosters.
Yeah. So
Oh,
anyway, you've been suffering from COVID, but you're like a real trooper and you came on anyway. I really appreciate that.
my pleasure. I was wondering how long it would take. I was wondering. It was a year and a half. That's not too bad. 2 years.
Everybody's going to get it, dude.
Yep.
Eventually,
Yep.
everybody's going to get it.
Everybody. You got to get it. Then
Yeah,
you
you
walk
actually
through
have
it.
to get it. It'll make your immune system better. So your
Yep.
immune system's going to be much improved after this. Besides, the Omicron variant is actually good news. People don't realize that, but it's it's not as bad as it was. That means our immune system is adapting to it, and the next round will probably even be lighter than this round. So I'm actually quite optimistic about what's going on right now in the world. A lot of people breaking dates and restrictions, and the truckers in Canada are raising a ruckus, and it's just no time to be alive. But what's really going on is the weird weather.
Well, and it's breaking to our favor in so many ways. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Whether it's the cold in Canada, which it's January, February, it should be cold, but it's not cold in an evil sort of way. It's cold enough to keep the machines and everything in place, but allowing the people to do their protests. And so we're highly supportive of them and their abilities to get out there, and protest,
Get a
get
wetsuit.
out there in a
If you put a
wetsuit.
wetsuit, yeah, put a wetsuit under your clothes, man. You can stay out in the cold for like hours and hours. So,
Keeps the wet out, keeps the dry in.
yeah, that's right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not really surprised by the ability of those people to take the cold. I mean, they're out there in seriously cold weather right now, and there's thousands of them, and it's literally the revolution not being televised. Remember that song,
Literally.
"The Revolution will not be televised"? Well, they're not televising this revolution.
Even though everyone knows about it.
Yeah,
We know about it, we're hearing about it, we're sharing it. It just at some point, the ridiculousness of the situation will just hit everybody, and there's another another one less in the woo crew.
yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are going to be kind of embarrassed when we look back at what happened here and the decisions that they forced on us, and they should be embarrassed because it was
Well,
really, really bad what they did.
what do you think about Boris Johnson and his bailing on all of the requirements? Was that a function of him nearly losing his job, and so he defaulted and went back to, okay, we got to do this, we got to do the right thing for you people? And the same with Denmark. They're just bailing on the restrictions. You think their populations were just too close to overthrowing, and they couldn't stand that to
I do.
happen? One example of that to happen.
I do. I think that I know we both know they keep track of all the chatter going on everywhere on the internet, on phone calls and everything. I think they were hearing chatter that was starting to worry them. And I think even the local governors that are surprisingly lifting the mandates, I think they heard the chatter too, and they realized that we can't send people door to door or force people to do this, because the chatter we're hearing is kind of scary, and we don't think we want to do that anymore. And I think that's what happened. I think because you notice how it was all universal. Austria was going all in. They were going to let anybody have anything. You couldn't go to a restaurant. Hungary was not Hungary. Romania was doing the same thing. Then all of a sudden, all at the same time, they all dropped everything. And only Australia and Canada seem to be the holdouts now.
And even Quebec is backing off a little bit.
Yeah, they are. They're starting to talk about it.
So for the US, November approaches in 9 months. That is not that far off. How do you reconstitute your reputation to bring people back to the fold enough to win a party, an election in November? And that's going to be really tough to do, because there's a lot of media, a lot of tape recordings, a lot of files, a lot of videos that could really wreck a lot of politicians at this point if they're not to change sides, even if it is temporarily.
Yeah, if they change sides, can you trust them?
Rhinos? No, you can't. You can't. You got to have new people. You got to have new people.
I think we're in for a wallop in time, and I'm looking forward to it. So, how do you think I'm going to start out with this. Do you think that the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab and all those guys, do they know about the weather and the weather changes that are coming, do you think?
I do. I think the vast majority of them do. There may be some that has been kind of quiet. If you have the Prime Minister of Alberta, Manitoba, getting asked a question about IVM, and he deflects to, we got to thank the weather people for the $1 billion rainfall we got. And so that was his deflection, was giving away another secret. So I do believe that as we get deeper into this program, that more and more people are briefed in. They are shown just how in charge they are, that don't F with us. We're the boss here. And that's kind of how, you own the weather too. So they can get sat on, they get, squished. So I think there's a lot of people who are, they're just going to follow the line. This is why it was so interesting with Hungary or Croatia, with Quebec backing off that hard line that they had previously been given to toe.
So, do you think the people behind the Great Reset and World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab and those guys, do you think they know about what's coming via the weather?
5 years ago, I would have said no, but today I'm going to say an emphatic yes. Yes, it is not that big a secret. If they're sharing it with prime ministers of Canadian provinces, if it's part of the game for food, for creating starvation, for creating abundance, for manipulating those larger commodities markets, I would say yes, everybody's aware of it. And I'm kind of concerned, because my heart sinks a little bit for the pilots in these aircraft that are mandated vaccines. It breaks my heart to know what they're doing with these people who have held this secret so diligently for so long. And that's another way that they're going to keep the silence, is through this action with the pilots, the mandated V. And so I trust that JU will have many whistleblowers coming forward. We'll have an abundance of truth telling in the coming weeks and months, an abundance. And it'll be heartbreaking. It really will, because they'll be put in that position with they have nothing to lose. And so we will hear their stories. By the hundreds, we will hear their stories. So yeah, that's part of the term the apocalypse is the revealing of truth. And everybody's got their own story. Some are tender and some are vicious, but they're going to come out. They're really going to come out. People are going to willingly tell them when they start playing with their families, as we are with these shots for these kids, these 5 to 11-year-olds and younger. Then there's no holding back. And that's, I think, what a lot of 2022 is going to be about, is that kind of a reveal on that kind of a personal level about what they have set up in my life for me to do, a bridge that I couldn't cross, but now I have to cross it and I have to tell the story why. So yeah,
I
they
have a
know.
friend. I have a friend he's in his early 40s, and he got the thing, and he got myocarditis just about 3 days later. And I don't have the heart to tell him that it's a death sentence. It may take 7 or 8 years, but I don't know how to tell him. And I've had a lot of friends die, by the way, over the last 3 months. An unusually large amount of people have died, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't have, I don't know if they got the thing or if it was some other thing that did it. Because we don't know. That's the whole thing about this. Is it sort of lays hidden from
Yeah.
us. We can't really identify it as the thing. So we're just kind of like blind, walking around trying to find our way through it.
Well, and we're not autopsying at a rate that we previously would have.
Well, they
And
don't do
this is
autopsies.
very rarely, very rarely. The family would have to request it and probably get it scheduled in because of the frequency of them. But in our remote area, there hasn't been a time where I haven't driven to town, and you know which way that town is, that I haven't seen our community ambulance, our HOA ambulance, either there or on its way back, every single time. So there is a huge uptick in the usage of this, and we can see that in the death reports, up 40%. It's going to become very, very common knowledge. And when that happens, I'm telling you, Jay, the gnashing and wailing of teeth will happen when they
It is.
realize that it has been a self-infected, a self-injected wound. And that's going to
Yep.
be a really tough one for all of us to support one another through. And that's really
You know,
where it's going to come, is supporting one another through.
I'm really glad you said that, because we can't say we told you so. That we
No,
just can't do that. We can't do that. We have to have great empathy for these people, and they're going to need us because,
you're going to need us. Yeah. Because they were
yeah,
doing the right thing. They were doing the right thing. In their
yeah,
eyes, they were doing the right thing. And that's okay, because there's an experience upon
that's
doing
right.
the right thing. And we're all given these God-given experiences to do the right thing, and the lessons that come from that. And so it's in a way, I'm excited to get the clarity of what's going on out there, but at the same time, the quantity of empathy that we're going to need is going to be unlike anything else in our life. Anything else in our life, we're going to have to come up with to be kind and generous and supportive, and not none of this snarky stuff. There's no room
That's
for
right.
that.
We don't
There's no
do that.
room.
Nope,
No.
not anymore. Just not in any room. All right, man. So lately there's been like crazy weather going on, and I follow the weather, and
Part of the plan. It's all part of the plan.
I actually wanted to ask you that to begin with, before we get into the meat of this thing. Uh, do you think that the chemtrails are real?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at them out the window now. Yep, they're there.
And what are they? I mean, besides just stuff coming out of the back of the truck.
The simplest explanation would be a football coach, his sketching board for the players. He draws out plans. We do this, we do this, we do this, boom, 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 boom. Let's hit it, guys, in the field. And that's truly all they are, is to assist those draftsmen, which are laying out the game plan for weather, to reveal what the atmosphere is doing. It's so silly. It's so stupid simple that you can't believe it's been hidden for this long. But yeah, it's all about gaming out and shaping the weather to a specific pattern so we can have more snow here or less snow there. There's different kinds of trails. They disperse in different patterns. It's very complex, but honestly, it's really, really simple. And so
Yeah.
I think to the end, we're going to have trails in the sky until the end, whenever that is or whatever that becomes. We'll have trails in the sky because they'll need them. They'll need them to guide their aircraft, their directed energy weapons, their lasers, their harps. They all need those sketches in the sky for their target practice, for their target not necessarily practice because we're far beyond practice, their expertise, so they can hit the mark.
So it gives them some kind of like a form in the sky that
Sure,
allows them
sure.
to bounce things off of and uses communication, and also probably
To
there's nanobites in there. And
Yeah, to weaken a storm, you'll see the cloud just go, whoo, it just melts away, and there's no definition. It looks completely hazy. Whereas a real storm will have a proper base of a cumulus cloud or a stratus cloud, and there's structure to it. And when these guys get done with it, it looks like it's a mess. Like you've taken a whipping spoon in there and just unified the whole mess. So I was going to show you some pictures, and maybe I can, maybe I can't. Boom. So if you lose me, I need to know that and share. Okay. So a regular day doesn't look like there's a lot going on. You see a trail cross, but you see this gap, this hole in the trail?
yeah,
That's of interest, and so is this one right here.
that's very
So
strange.
we have two pushes side by side, and then this plane came along and marked the western edge of this other indentation. And then as we're into this other thin cloud, the trail disappears and comes out on the other side of it, but doesn't
Oh,
continue
yeah.
to exist. It fades out.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's this is what it's all about. Is they've got these places in the sky. What's a blue sky day? There's not enough humidity to sustain this kind of moisture in the cloud. So the trails
Yeah.
shouldn't be there. They just plain shouldn't be there. And then we have these 90-degree bends. And with the clouds, I'll zoom in. See how they're just tall?
Yeah.
And so there's something electrical that's lifting them up. It's
Yeah.
trying to stretch them.
I've often thought that that these things had something to do with the electromagnetic field. Um, they seem to go in paths.
Definitely electrical. It's definitely. So what I was
Yeah.
after was to show you, we get all these ripples in the sky, and so we can nudge little teeny parcels of the atmosphere, maybe 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, across each other. So we'll get them approaching at 90 degrees, and at 90 degrees, like when we rub our hands, we get dirt lifting up off the skin. And so that it's called vorticity. So one cloud grinding against another, and we're going to get some kind of roll clouds, and that's what we end up seeing here. But that's also how we push part of an atmosphere somewhere else. And if you do that, you're going to create a low pressure space behind it that requires air to move in.
Right. So that's what they're moving air around.
They're moving air around, and then they use the trails to determine how much air has moved at what depth. From 41,000 feet down to 28,000 feet. They've moved 2 miles worth of it, 8 miles as it's gone downstream, 15 miles. So that's the whole point of this, is just moving and adjusting the atmosphere. I was trying to look
That's
for
Is that why they seem to appear right before storms, like the day
Bingo.
before a storm?
Yep. They want because they want the storm to arrive into a space that is conductive for the storm's further development or dismantlement.
Absolutely.
It
Right.
depends on what the agenda is, and where we have been in southern Colorado, the agenda has been drought. That's what they want. So we've got straight lines, that cube here,
They
straight
want to
line.
drive everybody off the land so they can steal the water.
Oh, give them our secrets. But that's what it is.
Yeah.
And they'll do this with thunderstorms too. They'll have big openings, big downward pushes, and yet you end up with modest clouds. They look like the boobies, the modest clouds, and that's just turbulence of a big downward push, and then the waves go out, and that disrupts the cloud's ability to coalesce, to collect raindrops, and that's a big. It's a big wind event, and then that potential for that storm at that prime time of day is gone. It's gone. It's lost its oomph for the day.
Yeah,
And
we've seen that quite frequently.
we have. We really,
Yeah.
really have.
Yep.
So there's a lot of shots in here.
Yeah,
But
you got
that's
it.
I have a lot.
There's a good one there. A crossed one there. Wow.
Crosswinds. Yep.
Yeah.
So and it hung on this one, and it hung on this part of the trail there. And if we look, we can kind of see that right through here, it changes from being spread out and oval to just a straight little stem, and then it jumps and then continues on. So there's something happening right here, and also right here because the cloud has changed. So, and I don't really necessarily refer to them as clouds any longer. They're trails. They're little points of reveal for me.
Yeah, I saw my first one in
Uh,
1994 in Seattle. It was the very first time I saw it. There he is
Wow.
in uniform.
In uniform. There's the goof. It's so what electrical or etheric action can make these clouds take this very odd and unusual form. And so we've got a lot of questions yet to ask. And I promise you, Jay, the people that are doing this have the answers. They know what they're involved with. They know the name of the game. They know what the end game is. They really do. And most of this activity is likely done inside of our state borders. So we're kind of privy to a lot of good stuff happening in the neighborhood. And I've started doing a lot of astronomy, just out of curiosity, catching little
Berkman
things
currents.
flying.
Those are Berkman currents.
Yeah, this is the
They're huge charged particles.
Veil Nebula is what it is called. But yes, it is. Yep,
That's what nebula is.
it's what it is. Yeah, it's kind of a cool self-contained telescope. Set it up there, uses your phone's GPS, knows where you are, and then can do robot things like take pictures and do that kind of research while you're inside where there aren't mosquitoes or not quite dealing with the cold. So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then the weather station that I've got out front keeps me connected. So yeah, I think with this storm, Jay, we're to a point in the season where they've told us all what's happening. They've let me back up into here.
So it's do you think that the snow in the Sahara and the snow in Saudi Arabia and the snow in Turkey, the bad storm in Turkey, and our producer lives in New Delhi. He's been freezing his butt off for the last month, which is really unusual because their houses aren't made for RF2 or something. And
Texas.
Yeah, Texas. Yeah, 70,000 people out of power right now in Texas. Big
The-
storm going across the United States right now, 2,000-mile long storm. Is that being pushed by the chemtrails, or is that something else?
Chemtrails help the guys guide where they want to shape the storm and how they want to shape the storm. So it would be much more difficult to or engineer this event without the chemtrails than it is with it, because you could see where to nudge the storm here, then nudge it here, then nudge it here, then nudge it here, and then you can have it take its proper shape. They've got to do that all while engineering the next one. And that's the challenge. So we'll get maybe a half day's break or a day's break, and then they've got to start playing with the one up in Alaska, the Gulf of Alaska. So they don't lose this general shape, this massive, massive ridge of high pressure that's sitting off the West Coast, and it has been there since, not continuously, but largely since last year, last spring. That enabled the big Texas freeze to happen. So it broke down, moved itself inland during the summer, and allowed little ripples inside of it to bring us some good summer rains. The monsoon was very good. California had a great October worth of rain. They really did, much more than they expected. Then November, top of the month, it turned dry. December, rain turned back on. They were like, all right, we're going to catch up. We're going to catch up. And then it turned off, and we went with a dry January. So if we can get one more dry month, one more aggressively wet month, that would do it for California. We would have enough water to be able to get through the dry season. But if that's it, and we don't get a wet February or March or April, then it's going to be tough, because 2 overly wet months is nice, but it's not enough to accomplish the goal. And this is what I'm watching so closely, because we're at that transitional time of month. And what I'm seeing is this ridge is not being let go of. It's staying tight, which means that we're far enough inland that we'll end up with northerly storms coming in from British Columbia, from the far North Pacific. Our storms will tend to be quick movers. They'll spend most of their time over land. They will deliver a little snow, but not, like north snow. Like today we snowed, and yesterday we snowed at 14, 15 degrees. 8 inches of precip at 15 degrees is very different than 8 inches at 32 degrees. At 32 degrees, that'd be about 8/10 liquid. 8 inches at 15 degrees is more like 1/3 of an inch liquid. So it looks good, but when it comes time to melt time, it's not so sweet. It's white, and it helps hold what's below it, but it's pretty weak. So what I'm seeing is that the long-term drought is in place, and we should plan on it being in place through the entire year. And that means drought in Texas. We're going to have farmers in a feed crisis from the Dakotas through Texas. The high plains, we'll see farmers losing their cattle and choosing, to hold on to them or to let go of them simply because of the cost. It's going to be a really hard life decision, because once you've let go of that producing asset, that cattle, that sheep, how do you get it back? That means you've got to go to the bank and borrow. And the banks are pretty much in the position with this reset of, nope, it's ours. It's ours. And there's millions of people that have just walked across the border who might want a little ranch to work on. So I think food is going to be way, way, way underestimated. I think Mike Snyder did a piece on it in Zero Hedge this last week, and it's an appropriate read for everybody. It's an appropriate read.
Yeah, I read it, and I know Mike, and yeah, he's doing some really seriously good reporting. He also does a show on YouTube called Epic Economist, which he uses another voice. That's his show, I think. And so that's even more in-depth reporting on what's actually going on in the world right now. But so do you think the end game here is starvation, or what is it? Are they playing God with the weather, or do they have an end game?
I think they've got an end game. I just don't think it's the end game that they wanted. I really and firmly believe that they're not going to be able to get the game that they wanted to accomplished. See, that's the beauty of randomness, the beauty
Yeah.
of letting someone else higher up, just throw in a wild card and like, oh crap, let's adjust and scramble on. So I don't think they'll get to their end game. I really, I know they won't. I know they won't. I think they've been waiting for some leader to show up to guide everyone, and that person hasn't appeared yet. Trump wasn't it, although he was a great person to do that. He was a great energizer. But there's still a person that they're waiting to manifest, and then they can have their battle with their chosen one and against this person, and that's freakishly.
The problem with
That's
that is the problem with that is that they're all a bunch of narcissists and they have no bench. So they, like there is no bench. If you think about it, they have no one to go to. If somebody falls, they don't have any replacement there. And I can't for the life figure that out. Why wouldn't you be working on your future? Getting young people in and really building it up, but they're not doing that. And like our great Speaker of the House, she's going to run again. She's what?
she's
Going to be
81.
90.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
they're not capable of it. People are done with it. They're done with it. That's why their card deck is empty. It's empty. Because if good old HRC is ready to jump up there on stage, she's already turned the stomachs of so many people that it's not going to happen. It's just no, nobody wants her except for herself. So I think
the question really then becomes, what are they going to do? They're not going to allow us to have, we'll say, an election next November. So they're going to. I think they're going to do everything they can to stop it. I really do.
I think so too. They'll try to create the circumstances by which an election is an untenable, dangerous event to carry on, and that's the only way that they can maintain their power. I agree.
Yep, I agree. That's going to be the only show to watch is what they do and how they do it, and they're crazy. I'm sorry, but they're crazy. I don't trust crazy people. They're crazy
because if they get rid of Joe, then that means she has to come up, and then she'll probably go to the Supreme Court, and then that would bring HRC to the White House in the position of vice president, and then they could slip her in to vice president or into president via the 25th Amendment. It seems convoluted. It really does, but it won't happen. I'll do it, Joe. It won't happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But what is going to happen, we don't know. That's the thing. We're in total uncertainty right now. And,
well, that means the planet. That means the planet is safe.
That is true. That is true.
Means the planet is safe.
So, do you think this? So, you think that they're controlling the weather through the entire planet? Is it global?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The planet's a closed system. All the flat earthers will tell you that it's a closed system, and so you end up with a swimming pool. You got one kid kicking his legs in the corner, and the waves go everywhere, and it comes back and forth and back and forth. And so, yeah, whatever they're doing, they've got to account for second and third causes as those vibrations, cross the planet. And you can see other places, other trails where they've dropped down a trail, one goes bonky, another one comes along 10, 15 minutes later, right in there to just end the vibration, end the resonance, that the other one is a signal that is there, that vibration emitted from this line, this is a zero line. And then they have to bring in another vibration to, all right, you can stop it, and to slow it down. So it's so complicated, but it's so simple, Jay. It's so it's an elegant.
What about the law of unintended consequences, though?
I'm sure it's a play. It's definitely a play. What my query is, when this game ceases, what then happens? What happens? And at some point, the power will be unplugged. The master switch up above will pull their plug, and like, okay, now live with this. Let's live with this little action. Let's shut this base down and see if you can compensate. Maybe you can't, maybe you can, but let's watch this gamble. Let's watch this play. So I
It
think
must
that,
be, it must be really expensive to be flying all these jets around. I mean, that has to be like super expensive.
I think for 40 years, going back to the 80s, they have known that every flight was going to have some kind of cargo allotted to this program. So if it's a flight from Philadelphia to Phoenix, that there's an extra 4,000 pounds on board booked for this program. And just know that it's on board, the equipment's on board, it's just part of the regular hardcore weight and balance of the craft. And so it's we're paying for it. We're paying for it by decreased capacity or aircraft capacity. The aircraft have to, the airlines are truly the ones that have to pay for it because it comes out of their capacity to profit. But at the same time, they're the ones that have to be on board. Otherwise, who knows why they get shut down, brought down, an engine flames out. They're crushed into oblivion if they don't behave.
Right. And they're controlled by the FAA anyway.
Yeah, your other Schumer quote was kind of on point. It said when Schumer tell Trump, there's like 6 ways that these agencies can get to you. Six ways from Sunday. So we behave. We behave.
Yeah. I still haven't figured out Trump and how he got elected yet, but yeah. So I'll tell you a little story. When I was working at Gaia in late 2012, and I would get the Boulder paper, the newspaper, the camera, and I was reading the camera one day, and there were the letters from the people reading the letters to the editor, and there was a letter, and it said, "I'm an ex pilot. I've just retired from an airline, and I just want you all to know I feel really bad for spraying the stuff in the skies." And I saw it and I was stunned. And it took me a couple of days, but 2 or 3 days later, I actually looked the guy up. I found him. I got his phone number because I wanted to interview him for Gaia, right? I was going to bring him in and probably bring you in or something, and right? Because there's awesome pilot coming forward, right? And I got the guy on the phone and I said, "I read your letter and I was just wondering if you'd like to come, if we could interview you." And his voice was quivering as he was speaking to me. He goes, "Well, I just want you to know that letter was a satire that I wrote." And I could tell he was lying. I could tell someone had gotten to him, and his voice was shaking. You could tell he was terrified. He was terrified that he had to answer me. And he got off the phone as fast as he could. So, they got to him. Clearly, they got to him.
Yeah, clearly. And I think this vaccine thing is going to be the one thing that will set thousands of them free. If they want to do that to me, then I can get back at you too. And I'm sure there's been some contingencies prepared for that on both sides, but the truth will come out. It will come out. There's going to be a lot of truth telling in the next couple of months. It's going to be amazing, Jay. It's going to be amazing. It's scary and amazing because we'll have the doctors start to talk. We'll have pharmacies start to talk. We'll have the chemtrails, the pilots, the National Weather Service guys begin to reveal. It's going to be a summer of hell. It really will, because we're all going to have to adjust our points of view. And if we're not liable or not pliable enough to adjust how we choose to look at the world, then it's going to be a really tough go of it for you. Really tough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the cork's out of the bottle and it's just going to start flowing. And as one person goes, and pretty soon it just drives more and more. And, if one person says they have what they know, and then they hear somebody coming forth, and that liberates them to now come forth. And that's what you're going to see. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, I honestly assumed when I first came forward back in 2004, 2005, that there would be others. That if this bloke can see it, then others can see it as well. I was wrong. I was wrong. It was going to take a bigger wave to shake people up. I was wrong, and
Do people in, do people
eventually
in
they
other,
will.
are there weather people who agree with you? Other
Yes,
weather that you know?
there there are. There are.
Yeah.
They're slim, but they can see what happens to them. They would prefer to just what they've done is exactly what I did. You take it as far as you can without losing what you've got.
Right.
And that's it's a fine line
Nicely
unless you're
business.
ready to just throw it away. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I know some folks and I'm not pushing them. You know, when they're ready to go, they're ready to go. And
Well, let me
then
know. If they want to talk. I'd love to have them on.
it would, wouldn't it? I would have to,
Yeah. I'd love
yeah,
to have them on.
yeah. He was already, he was with CNN and CNN shut him down. You know, do you want to keep the job? Yes or no? You know, then where do you want to work after having worked at CNN? Dubuque, Iowa, Grand Island, Nebraska. You know, where do you want to go? And that's what it comes down to. Where do you want your next salary to look like? How big is that check going to be for you? And it's a contemplative point. You may know and understand what's going on, but can you adjust your cost of living on a dime? And some can, and others can't. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hopefully, if you're out there watching and you want to come forward, because for whatever reason, got a place on this show to tell your story. I really want to hear it. Anybody out there who's observing these weather patterns and seeing how the chemtrails are pushing things, I'd like to know the science behind it. You know, I'd like to know exactly what's going on here. I do think it is electromagnetic. I think that they're picking up charges from the different layers of the atmosphere, and then they're using something to then push these whatever they are. They're not ions. I think they're probably
yep,
ions,
yep,
right?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, there's because what they have to do is dope up the atmosphere with these metals so that the ions, the waves, have something to attach to. And
Wow.
then with slightly different sizes, you can push one cloud through another cloud. And this is what happens so often. And this is what it needs to be observed from space is this cloud of 7 nanometers, not nanoparticles, is going through one with 2 nanometer particles, a thin hazy cloud. And so you could just see one blast through and merge through another. And the crazy thing is any kind of time lapse software, be it an iPhone, be it a GoPro, be it some of these other projects that are available online, can shoot and do this time lapse. And that's what I did back in 2005 was set up time lapse cameras because I wanted to know what the clouds were doing, not the trails, but it's the trails that revealed the secrets, what they were doing up there. They're not behaving like regular clouds, and clouds aren't behaving like clouds either. So I'm really surprised there hasn't been more time lapsers. They're just kind of saturating Instagram with clouds of time lapse. So there's so much to go into, Jay. There's so much. There's hours of videos that I've got set aside to we can look at this, and that was my big discovery. Was it happened through time lapse back in 2005? That's how they're playing with the weather, and the trails are just draftsmen. They're just guiding where the trails they want to be, where they want this storm to be in 8 hours or 18 hours or 28 hours. And they'll just shape it into that mess. It's
So the airplane releases, the jet releases metallic particles that get ionized. That's why they stick together, because they're stuck together magnetically. And then they slowly dissipate as the field lessens. And then they use those to direct atmosphere.
to charge it. And then once it's charged positively, the water molecule says, hey, I like that over there. Let's go. Let's go. And we wouldn't have the number of high clouds in the sky on any given day that we would without this ionizable salts, floating in the air. We would have clearer skies. And that's
And
just,
and,
yeah.
and so the patterns that you see are they're trying to create like a drought in the Midwest and in Texas and southern Colorado and New Mexico. And but then they're pushing a lot of water up into Washington, Oregon, Northern California. But
Well,
then it's dissipating by the time it gets to Idaho and Montana.
and they could shape that jet stream way out in the Pacific, and they can narrow the jet stream's landfall imprints instead of having it all spread out from, say, San Fran up to the northern side of the Vancouver coastline. You just squeeze it in; it comes in faster, so you get a heavier duty rainfall over those coastal ranges. And then the Cascades, the bulk of them being farther south, they'll get some, but not all. And then the event is gone. It's gone. And they can, shoot it up, deionize it. Ooh, smells like rain. The clouds look all hairy, and it's gone. I was just looking for some other photos.
I've noticed that happening, by the way, a lot. It looks like it's going to rain like hell, and then nothing.
And then it just doesn't. It just
No.
it's really kind of disconcerting. And what I've learned is that the trend is your friend. And if the trend has allowed you to, I'm going to share something real quick. All right. Where did you see this?
Yep.
All right. We already have the means to travel among the stars. These technologies are locked up in black projects and would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Everything you can imagine, we already know how to do. Ben Rich, second director, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, stated during a 1983 alumni speech. 93, excuse me.
Yep.
So that's where we are. This is almost 30 years ago that has been known and high-five in and amongst those circles. So it's going to take a different kind of leadership. It's going to take a different kind of revolution. It's going to take some disclosure where it's probably forced, not a volunteer one, but a forced disclosure for us to get these things out of the secrets. It'll happen. I don't know when, and I don't know by whom, but Jay, it'll happen.
I think we're going to go broke. I think that's when it's going to happen. I think we're going to go broke, and they're going to devalue the currency all the way till we just completely go broke. And then people aren't going to have pensions. Everything that they've been working for is not going to be there, and they're going to be really peed off, and they're going to start blabbing. And maybe they can get a book deal or something, and make money that way. But that's what's going to happen. And I think that is going to happen much faster than people think. I think we're going to go bankrupt much quicker than people think we are.
Because when the bankruptcy happens, it does. It happens slowly at first, and then all of a sudden, it's just boom. So
that's right.
It's the when. It's the when. And there have been plenty of people talking about mid-Feb to March. Mid-Feb to March.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. So if we suddenly ran out of money tomorrow and they couldn't fund these projects anymore, what then would happen with the weather?
Skies would clear up. The skies would clear up. And we would probably, because they'd have to explain away why the planes aren't flying. And it could be that the fuel isn't being delivered because of the truckers. It could be because we're not getting the raw petroleum to the refineries. It could be because they're not showing up to work. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons at this point in time when it comes to supply lines, and that can be used truthfully and dishonestly. The supply line excuse. Uh, but I would say it'll be supplies that'll trigger the break. I think
Yeah, and I
so.
got to tell you, I don't think that it's a conspiracy, the supply chain thing, because I just know guys that just quit. I know guys who were truckers who just quit. They said, I'm not, I'm done with this. I'm just done. I'd rather go home and grow some pot and, pet my dog instead of working out there. I'm making 140K a year. It's great money, but, it's just not worth it to him anymore.
No,
The
no.
hassles and, you get 2 tickets. A guy here in Colorado a trucker got in an accident. He got 110 years
Oh
in
yeah,
jail. It's like, who wants to take that kind of risk? Right.
right. And where are we job wise? These numbers just came out on Friday that we have 7 million empty positions, 7 million, and then 4 million homeless, or not homeless, but jobless looking for work. So there's a huge imbalance. The employment is there, but it comes with conditions. And a lot of these conditions, people are not willing to submit themselves to, i.e., that thingy. And they're just not going to
Yep.
do it. So we're going to have to find an adjustment. Boeing said no to the vax, whereas T-Mobile said yes to the vax. So there's some of these larger businesses that are sticking to the guns, and then others are saying no. Our employees are more valuable, and our continuing ongoing in business is more valuable than the vaccination. So it's going to be a long, long, long year. A long year.
Yeah. And these corporations, they have to worry about, their insurance. So the insurance companies are kind of dictating policy to them. That's the other problem here.
True.
Like my former employer, I'm sure they're not going to ask for anything from their employees, but they also now have the liability, right? If somebody gets sick and spreads it and then sues the company. So, it's a tough gig, man.
And we put a lot of really good companies in uncomfortable positions in dealing with person's healthcare. And is this still how do we say this kindly? Is this still an experimental product? An experimental product that isn't approved, and then if it causes death, are we responsible? Are we liable for that? And there's going to be these companies that'll say yes and no. No, we're not liable. Because when we get so many cases showing up and the financial costs become unbearable, I'm sure some of them will bail on it and say, no, we're not going to do it.
Yeah, man,
It's a thought.
it's a world. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be I'm really glad I'm not in the corporate world anymore. Wouldn't want to be there right now.
You and I.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen with the weather? Is it going to are we going to stay in a drought here in Southern Colorado?
Yes. Yes. Yep. I think we'll get interludes, but I think the net game this winter will be a deficit. We'll walk away with a deficit this winter. I really do. There was I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but there was one of these papers that was published by one of Klaus's buddies in the game for the 2020s. And 2022 was a big drought year. It was a big drought, and that set the stage for a greater food crisis to unfold in 25. But that drought had to happen in 25 or in 22.
So you think the everyone getting hungry is going to happen in 2025?
I think it's that close. It might even be closer than that, depending on how this year goes. Because you can exhaust the farms, you could drain them of the water. You can not get, you could turn down the irrigation. We can do things. This valley that we are in has enough water if we were to water it via irrigation rather than sprinkler. And that's the change that needs to happen across this country. is we need to go to water. We need to go to flood irrigation instead of sprinkle irrigation. But we're not equipped for that. We don't have the six sons on the property to do the work that dad and family needs to get done. And then we've brought in the labor across the board, but they don't know how to do the work. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they don't have those relationships with those families where their labor is going to be required. And I believe, Jay, that the border issue can become a net benefit, that we can use that labor. We can turn them into citizens. We can use them for the betterment of the United States of America. I think that script could absolutely be flipped on them. And instead of them being projected as bad news, that they are welcomed. And those that welcome them will get their votes because they're going to be voting. That's been kind of a guarantee because the D's will ensure that happens in most states. So I think that we need to be able to flip the script on them and welcome them. With the loss of life that's going to happen from the jabs, we're going to need them here. And I think there's a way that we can use this narrative, we can use this opportunity to bring in another round of 2, 3, 4 million Americans just when we need it. I know it may sound a little odd, but
no, it doesn't sound odd at all. I've actually thought about that myself, and that we're going to use labor, and but also like what El Salvador is doing. Those Central American countries could actually flip the switch on it and all go to Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden their citizens aren't going to be so willing to leave anymore. And because you know what, I'm just going to say it straight. That's the problem. The problem is, I'm going to say it straight. The United States foreign policy towards those countries is so abhorrent and has been for 70, 80 years that we are the ones that cause those conditions in those countries to cause those people to want to leave those countries. I'm sorry, but it's true. The corporations, the fruit company, and all those corporations they treated those people like slaves and created terrible conditions of corruption. And I would leave too.
I would leave too. And maybe it's time that we see, excuse me, that dessert comes back on those companies. You know, and it's fair. It's totally fair. But I think there's a way to homogenize and to return some peace, return some tranquility down to those countries that are they're beautiful. They're our neighbors, for goodness sakes. You know, we should be able to travel. We should be able to travel freely down there and they up here. There shouldn't be a problem. There shouldn't be a problem. So I just think we could do that.
I, for one, think that Bitcoin's going to solve a lot of the problems that we're facing right now. And it's not going to happen anytime soon, but slowly and surely it's going to happen. If a country like, say, Nigeria would switch over, because I guess there's 200 million people in Nigeria.
With their population?
That's about 200 million, I think.
Epic.
It would be life-changing. It would change the whole thing. It would undermine the entire banking system and the corporatocracy. And you know, I think that's where we're going.
It's one day at a time, but we'll get there. We really will. We'll get there. And Nigeria would be a big one. And we need one over there that is semi-integritous. That's really the issue. And maybe El Salvador is going to be showing the way. I mean, just on this last dip, they bought 140 more. So they're doing it. They're doing it. Here's stateside. We're going to need to be buying it too.
Well, I highly recommend people look into buying either Bitcoin or Ethereum, but I'm starting to think that only Bitcoin is really the really solid one. The more I look into it. So I encourage you to buy it because you will thank yourself. Cliff High called me or wrote to me in 2016 and said, if you don't buy Bitcoin, I'm never talking to you again. And so I didn't know how to tell, my wife that I was going to spend, a whole bunch of money of ours on this crazy thing. And because I couldn't really even explain it to her. So, but I did it. I just did it. Spontaneously did it. And I didn't say anything for about 6 months until she finally saw it and went, where's all that money? And I told her it was in Bitcoin, but it had already gone up the same amount that I spent.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I was safe from her wrath, but, and thanks, Cliff, for doing that for me, because I wasn't going to do it, but he's worth a lot of money. That's for sure.
Well, we love a man who plays in the move.
All right.
I mean, he's good.
Yeah.
I love his Twitter feed. They booted him off, and now he's back stronger than ever, just flipping the bird to the big man. And he's using it. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. But he's using it. He's even more out there now than he was before. And I appreciate it. Well,
his whole scheme of writing letters to state legislator guys and state senators, threatening to use the court system to hold them personally responsible for their behavior, that is
wise.
People that have you can use the courts to sue people and not pay a dime. That they have to help you. I know I'm involved in some of these things right now. They have to help you, and you can hold people personally responsible for passing laws that are not constitutional. And if you start writing letters to those people saying that, you keep going down this road, I'm going to take you to court, right? You're going to cause those people to, back up a little bit. Maybe not at first, but if you send enough letters, they're going to start worrying about being held personally responsible for these things. And they should be held personally responsible. If you're passing laws that are not legal, you should be held personally responsible.
Yep.
You get sued. In other words, they have a protection thing with insurance, but you threaten to sue them beyond that. Beyond whatever that amount is. I think it's $1 million, but you threaten to sue beyond that, then that becomes personal to them. And that's actually the path toward a peaceful revolution.
And then they have to defend it. And if they can't defend it, they can't defend it.
Yeah, it's like in Australia, the cops live in a neighborhood. And the neighbor ladies come over to the cop's wife during the daytime and tell her all about how, they don't really like the way the police are acting. Then the cop gets home and he has to hear it from his wife. And then he's more reticent to go out and do these very forceful things that they're doing. And that's how we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to do it on a more personal level. Make it personal and say, you're actually hurting real people. You're hurting their businesses, but I don't even know if we have to go that far, because I feel right now that they are in full retreat, and I worry about that because I wonder why they're in full retreat.
Doesn't seem like they've hit enough of a barrier to be in full retreat. Like,
that's going to be interesting.
Maybe it's just a head fake.
That's what I'm worried about.
They'll come back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, it's really good to have you on. It's always informative, and I'd like to have you back.
Absolutely.
As we get further down the line.
We'll get into other detail, and I'll have more my head with me, and it'll all be better. Yeah,
get better. Take Ivor. Take the big eye.
Yeah. No, that's already on board. That's already happened.
Can't use that word.
Oh, yes, we can.
All right, Scott.
We just whisper.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, man. Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Weidner. This is Reality Check. Hit subscribe, like, and all that other stuff. And I will be back with some more shows.